All right. Welcome to Friday. Thanks for being
Yeah.
here. Thanks for joining us. We are ecstatic to see some new faces, some familiar faces, and just really pumped, for lack of a better word, to keep the conversation going monthly with these fit roundtable sessions. I feel like we were talking offline just before we let everyone into the room today. I feel like fit is definitely, we've been talking about it a lot at the NBDA recently. We, especially made this dedicated time for these conversations. And at the Cab to Show East coming up December 8th and 9th, we actually now have a fit zone that's going to be happening. So a whole area at the show dedicated to fit and continuing these conversations. So to me, that means we're doing some good work here. The point of today's conversation is to openly talk about what trends we're seeing in fit, what's new, answer any questions you have. And to help us along, because I by no means am an expert in this field, we have two experts who are on our panel. Greg Robideau from Serata International Cycling Institute and Damon Wyatt from BikeFit. So I will just maybe Greg, we do have some new people here. You want to do a quick intro to everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, as always, Heather, for graciously having us here. My name is Greg Robideau. I am the executive director and owner of the Serata International Cycling Institute. I have been working in bike fit for the last 20 plus years. I am a physical therapist by trade. I also run the cycling medicine program for Spalding Rehab, so I treat cyclists and triathletes as well as doing bike fitting and teaching bike fitting and bike fitting certification on top of that.
Thanks, Greg. Awesome. And Damon, you want to just introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Damon Wyatt. I'm the brand business manager of BikeFit, which is a brand of QBP. I was with BikeFit prior to its acquisition back in 2015. I've held a bunch of jobs in BikeFit. I formerly ran a podcast about bike fitting. I randomly researched bike fitting, but I am not a bike fitter by trade. So I get to talk about this from kind of the level of how it impacts people and how it impacts your business. Whereas I rely on Greg for his expertise in the points of fitting and the how-to and fitting. But I'm excited to be here, Heather, and thanks everybody for joining. I just love talking about fit.
Yeah, I love to see this group is getting bigger and bigger. This is awesome. We also have Rochelle Scouten. She's the development director at the NBDA. Her and I will be moderating and watching that chat function. So if you have questions along the way, you can either hit the little tab, which raises a hand. You could put them into the chat, or just like make some craziness and I'll see you doing it and I'll call on you. So however you prefer to interact is okay with us. Before we get into specific questions, I always like to start with, okay, it's been a month since we were last together. What are we seeing? What are we noticing? Damon, from your top level perspective, what's happening in the fit land?
Oh, I don't have a good topic for like what's new and fit, but I have to say I was thinking about the beginning and starting prior to fit. So this is kind of a discussion item and I'd love to hear from others. And the first person I'm gonna ask is Greg is, what I'm thinking is, what are some of the questions that we ask to kind of get information to understand the needs of the person in front of us, a cyclist? So we're talking like before they even come for a fit. Like, what are those questions that help us elicit kind of what do we know about them? What type of rider are they? What do they need? And what are their expectations without kind of getting one of those grandiose things? Like I asked the fitter the other day, I said, what do you ask? And he asked, a cyclist, how they wanted to feel after a fit. And they said, well, I don't want to feel like garbage. And he said, well, is that on the bike or off the bike? So how do you hone that in and how do you question? So I want to throw this one to Greg because I was interested in how different shops and different fitters ask these questions to their customers.
Well, I think if we're looking 30,000 foot view, when somebody just walks into either start a conversation with you as an independent fitter, or if this is someone that's walking into your shop. One of the questions that I like is, and I do ask this in my interview as well, but how do you identify as a cyclist? And I throw that out there because it's one of these things where I think each of us have some sort of a relationship with riding a bike. And they might look at you a little bit sideways, like, well, what do you mean? How do I identify as a cyclist? And that's when you can kind of put some potential things out there, like, do you identify as someone who races a bike? Do you identify as somebody who just rides with your kids? Are you a commuter? Like, what is your relationship with a bike? And kind of defining that relationship for yourself, as well as maybe for the person that you're talking to, kind of helps give you some direction as to how you might want to progress forward. And then once you kind of have an idea of what it is, that how they see themselves, then you can kind of start to formulate some questions that might be a little bit more targeted as far as what they want to do with the bicycle, and what their ultimate goal of either purchasing a bike or getting a bike fit might be. And I mean, I'm happy to go, crazy deep, but I think that's one of the ones that kind of triggers a conversation. And the way I ask that, always, I sometimes get this little bit of a head tilt, like, what do you mean? How do I identify as a cyclist? And because I say it that way, it always kind of grabs attention a little bit. And I feel like that's a good conversation starter, which oftentimes gets you there. And, we were, as Damon was saying, we were just talking offline a few minutes ago. And one of the issues, or one of the things that's really warmed my heart through kind of the fall schedule of going out and talking to retailers, whether it's through shows like the CABDA shows, or whether it's one-on-one where retailers have reached out to me. Retailers are very interested in this, and we're seeing this with the number of people that are coming to events like we have today. But one of the things that we were talking about offline was also this idea that even if all of us are on board with this, we still need to make sure that our consumers get on board, and our consumers know that this is a real priority. This is, having a bike fit is not just a nicety, in my opinion, and maybe the opinion of other people here, but it's really the best way to find the right tool for the job. So, how you apply it and how you charge for it and all that kind of stuff, maybe that's got some deeper discussion. But what I hope for this industry is that not only our retailers, but maybe even at a higher level, people that are selling bikes are starting to say, hey, the way that we best serve our customers is to make sure that we get the right bike underneath them so that they're going to have the best possible experience. And so we've obviously seen that there's been some trickle down because all of you guys are here. I hope that there's a little bit of trickle up as well, and we get some of the the higher level brands and things like that really commit to saying that this is something that is a real important part of the process of acquiring a bicycle.
Wow, that was an awesome detailed answer. Damon, way to throw that right out there. Does anyone have any other thoughts, questions that come to your mind starting at this spot Happy?
First thing I want to know is what hurts, because most people who come to me have some sort of injury. Could be a knee replacement, hip replacement, could be foot pain. It runs the gamut from trauma to surgery. And I need to know where they're coming from and what their issues are.
That's a great point. What hurts? Anyone else have something that they start off asking?
I generally ask, like, what's their goal? I want to have not only a starting point, but an end point as well. So they have expectations and I have an expectation. And at nearing the end of a bike fit, I can say, we reached these goals today. And it might not be the finish line, but we're moving towards that direction, whether it's in a follow-up fit or going beyond that. But it gives the customer some expectations of what I can do and help them with and what they can expect out of me that day.
Yeah, and I think that also helps you okay, the session's done for today. We've achieved the goal. You know, it puts closure on the fit, right? Which could go on for hours if you don't have that. Anyone else have something that they open up with or ask in the beginning?
To Andrew's,
I would like,
go
I
ahead.
would like to ask, go ahead, can you hear me?
Yep.
Ted, you're good.
It's Ted Ernst, yeah. I would like to ask is that these seem to be almost at the second step. And I was just wondering how many NBDA members that are tuned in would like to get into the fitting, and are they aware of what they really should have in their inventory as far as getting started? What kind of tools do they need? What kind of equipment? What kind of merchandise they have? And I, marked a bunch of stuff down. And if that's something that you feel is important, with your forbearance, I'd be more than happy to relate what I did all through the years of fitting, because I started way ahead of most of you guys. Probably did fittings longer than you've been doing. You guys put together. You're good experts that have led into this beautiful conversation. So as a result, then growing up in the bike business, when my dad started in 1934, he had a racing club, at the shop and all that. So I grew up with that basic aura about me all the time. And then when I started my own shop after coming back, from racing, amateur and pro, why then I, started fitting in when nobody else was ever doing it. So I was kind of a person that just did it all the time. And as a result, then just got into it, and people sent me to other people, and it went from there. Now my screen just went dark. What does that mean? Oh, here we go. Just had to move my cursor a little bit. So anyhow, would you like to hear what equipment I needed to get started and did my fittings? Is that of interest to maybe get a foundation to where we could go into what the two guys have so beautifully, told us about where to go with the second step? Because I don't know how many people would really like to get started but don't know what's all involved. And I haven't found that or heard that in the previous conversations. And I've made a list. If you'd like to hear that, I'd like to take some time and start with that, if that's okay by you.
Ted, I love that. I love that. And I'm looking at the people who are on the call today, and I know many here have their fitting section set up. So I don't know, maybe we could, I see a thing just came up in the chat. Just one second, Ted, I'll come back. Is there a fitting certification? Ted, let's come back to you for a second, if you don't mind. And I'm just going to let Greg answer this question, and then we'll see how we can wrap it up.
Yeah, because I've got a whole, but a lot of tools that you may or may not be using that people have in their shops that aren't aware of, or the things that they don't have, they really should get to make a really good fitting possible. Otherwise, you're working kind of in the cloud, and you're looking through fog rather than really having the tools at hand that you would need to make it comfortable for your client to get a fitting going. And even people who are doing fittings might get a lot of it, because every time I talk about this kind of stuff, I learn more. And you're learning more each time, regardless how many dozens of years you've been doing it, is the good thing. So that's kind of where I am.
I'm totally.
Because I can go to the second step too with the other stuff, but I feel I like to start with a foundation so you can build a good house on it.
I agree. So let's start with that foundation. And Greg and Damon, just because you're the two experts on the panel today, let's start with just the certifications for fit and maybe discuss some of those. And then we'll maybe go into setting up a fit studio or some of the tools that Ted is talking about.
Sure, no problem with me. I'm happy.
Damon, do you mind if I jump in here?
Sure.
All right, great. First of all, Ted, thank you so much. I mean, this is one of the wonderful things about being able to sit down and have this conversation is that just in front of me right here and on this screen, the wealth of knowledge that's sitting in front of me is staggering. From my colleague Damon and Happy and folks that I've known for years, and some new faces that I don't know as well. The one thing that I've experienced myself, to Ted's point, over the years of teaching BikeFit, is that I learn something from my students every single time I teach a course or I have a conversation with somebody, and we need to be open to that. BikeFit does not belong to me or my company. It doesn't belong to Damon or Damon's company. It doesn't belong to any of us. We all are a part of BikeFit, and I encourage everybody who's interested in it to take whatever coursework and whatever certifications you can find. My company, the Serrata International Cycling Institute, does offer a certification in bicycle fitting. Other companies also offer certifications in bicycle fitting. So as far as what I can think of off the top of my head is that some of the major retailers like Specialized in Trek historically have had certifications. BikeFit offered a certification and probably will continue to do so at some point in time with Damon at the helm. There are Slow Twitch, Eric Mullen for a while. There are a lot of different resources out there. And what I try to impress upon my students is that, I have an opinion and I feel like I've put together a well-formulated foundation, to use Ted's word, for looking at and evaluating each individual cyclist and creating that matrix, creating that platform is what a basic certification is all about. And if you've created a good methodology, no matter what certification you get, if the methodology is sound, then you should be able to apply that to any cyclist that walks in the door, whether they're on a $20,000 triathlon bike or a $200 beach cruiser. The application of fit to that person is going to be the same process. The parameters may change, but the process should be the same. And what we're looking to do is create a way of thinking about dealing with and providing the best solutions for every cyclist that presents to us. And they're all individuals. Unfortunately, it's not, this, I've said this before, is that, bike fit is not easy. It's not a simple solution. It's one that requires time and attention, but that time and attention is valuable, not only to the person that you're doing the bike fit with, but it's really valuable to the shop as well, because what you're really doing is you're creating a relationship and you're bringing somebody with a warm hug into the sport of cycling or into cycling in general, whether they consider it a sport or a pastime or just something I like to do on the weekends with the kids. A bike fit is a warm hug. It's come in, let me tell you all about the sport that I love and how to find some enjoyment in it yourself.
Love that. I love that. Does everyone here, show of hands if you have a certification in bike fit? Pretty good, pretty well certified. And that's something we want to be hanging in our shops, right? And showcasing. Like, Damon, would you talk about that a little bit? Like letting
general certifications of what they do. Let me try to talk about this let me agree with Greg first. Let me tell you that. Let me agree with Greg on that sense of, there are a lot of certifications. COVID has hurt a lot of the industry. I mean, Greg, could you talk about this too? And of how it's impacted in-person training. Because I think the question from Papa Wheelie's Bike Shop was like, is there a certification? There's a decent amount. There's a lot. There's even levels of international. I know for BikeFit, we've worked with a lot of different countries in Europe, even doing online things through Europe and Asia. I think, like Greg said, I will stress that this is kind of a journey. Right now, type in BikeFit into Google education and see what you find, and you will find a plethora of knowledge and a plethora of opinions. And I think this is really like, as you're looking to try to make this part of your shop, if you don't have a certification now, and just because you have one, I challenge you to continue your learning process. Ted said that earlier. He said, I learn consistently, I learn constantly from people. And, Happy has put on situations where he's had people come in and talk to each other. Reach out to people. Greg or I can give you references of other fitters that would be willing to talk to you. The IBFI, which is the International Bike Fit Institute, also has a mentorship program where they connect people who are getting into fitting or you're having fitters in your shop, kind of mentor, which I think is incredible. I mean, because there's one thing to be in a course and get, so much information and time, which is amazing, but to be able to continue that education, ask questions. So just a big piece, and I'll get to that point, Heather, you asked me, which is ask why. Do a lot of that. Do a lot of asking. Like, why? Why is this way? Or why does this happen? Or why is this person feeling this? Or if I made this change, why did it work? I just challenge you to ask a lot of questions. That's what I've been doing over a journey of knowledge, is ask questions. As for certifications, I see it this way. I think in like the world of being a doctor, when you walk in, like my wife and I had to go in because she had a pretty serious condition at one point, and we went into like the specialist of medicine at this office, and he had been in the field for 40 years. And so I was staring at him across the desk, and I swear to you, it was like a wall, just a wall of certifications everywhere. And I felt like, okay, this person is clearly qualified. The interesting point about that is he really didn't want anything to do with us. He kind of didn't give us a really good answer. And even though those wall full of certifications was there, which I believe made this person an incredible surgeon, I didn't feel real comfortable about the level that he cared. So to Greg's point of what he said is, yes, it is important to show that you have a certification and that you have this covered. And in other countries, I'll tell you this very specifically, with South America, they are very much about certifications. In Asia, you have to have certifications. That means that you own something. But I will tell you right now, it is more important, I think, for your shop that you create a relationship with someone and you establish trust with them. Now, you need that information to know how to do something well, but establishing that relationship is going to have so much more value than what you have on the wall.
And I just wanted to put one caveat on the certification thing, just because of the way that Damon presented that, I think was excellent. For a certification to mean something, there has to be some sort of testing of your skills. So not every certification is equal. So, for instance, I can speak to you from what we do. In order to get just a basic certification through SICI, there is a written exam as well as practical exam that has to be passed at a certain level of competency, or you do not get certified. And so, simply taking a course does not certify you to do anything. Yes, maybe it improves your knowledge base, but the application of that knowledge is what's important. And so if your personal education journey, I would ask you to seek out, if you're looking for a certification, look for a certification that holds you accountable, that says, I will certify you if you meet certain competencies. And, and I believe that to be important, that we hold ourselves accountable if what we're going to search out is something that actually carries some weight and has some value.
Love this conversation. All right, well, let's open it up before we go back to Ted, because I want to make sure we have time for specific questions, because I know sometimes people come with specific questions for everyone. And here we go. Thank you, Mike's Bike Shop. How do we extend the bike fit conversation and service past basic sizing to the massively growing rec cycling market, specifically the e-bike market? I love this question. Dope question. All right, who's going to take it?
Damon, have at it first.
Oh, thanks, Greg. I love this question, by the way. This is fantastic. Because I'm going to talk about this a little bit, at the idea that, and this group could probably say this, but I think in the past, at least based on what I've seen and what my experience, even with BikeFit as a company, we've really kind of focused on a market. I don't think we meant to. I don't think that was the goal, but I think it became from like the cyclist demand was, performance, efficiency, aero tunnels, kind of fitting in some ways had become more like the marginal gains in a way, right? Whereas now it's like, well, let's look at cycling, right? In the US, cycling is a rec sport. In Europe, cycling is a way of life. It is a commuting, because that's what they have to do. So I think it's a great question of like, so how do we look at the market? And I would say my suggestion to you on that is develop your language so that fit becomes a part of literally every bike you sell. Every bike you sell. It becomes a pillar within your shop. So most shops, I would say, kind of have two components, right? Sales and service. Those are your two pieces, right? And sales leads to service, getting a bike. You talk about how you do service with the bike, how often you should do service with the bike. You're kind of doing this educational process with your customers, right? Well, what if fit was like that third pillar, right? So let's imagine it kind of cyclical. What if your sales department talks about fit, your fitting talks about service, your service talks about sales? In other words, it becomes something that's part of the normal conversation. The how, which I think you're probably also asking, which is like, well, how do I do that? I mean, I think that's establishing what your process and procedure is going to be for your shop. What is your process now to how you bring up fit, how you talk about fit with customers, and what your fit is, and establish what that would be for the type of bike. Okay, so what is your type of thing for an e-bike or a commuter bike? Or if you have a bike that is sold for $600, the least amount that you have in your shop. Establish a procedure for that you are going to call fit. Now, it might not be the same level of fit that you're doing with someone who buys and wants to pay for a fit for a $5,000 bike that you spend 2 hours with, but it certainly becomes part of every single bike. Like every bike, every person needs some type of fit, right? And I'll argue that till I'm run out of breath, because people are not, there's no such thing as average. We are not average. We are odd, asymmetrical, and somewhat interesting beings, right? So to assume that we all
Damon,
just
you're
adapt
a very interesting being.
something like that. I also know that like my legs are not the same length. I also know that my face is asymmetrical because, you know, I married up. That's a totally different story. But the point is here is I love that you asked this, and I'm wildly passionate about this because I don't have a good answer of like what process and protocol is needed for those. But I know that establishing one for your shop that works, that everyone can consistently talk about, is going to show incredible benefits to getting fit to the consumer.
I love that answer. Beth, can I just call on you for a second? How do you extend this conversation to all sorts of bikes?
Well, I just have a lot of experience just because I'm 4'10" and nothing ever fit me. So I would say that, you know, for me personally, it is a personal thing. And to answer Papa, they said that they fit all BMX beach cruisers. Should they charge for it? Absolutely. You should charge for every fit. Otherwise, you're lowering what fit is in the minds of people. It should be worth something. It should be valuable. It is valuable because, like Damon said, we're all different. So when I sell fit in general, I mean, I've been fitting Pelotons and exercise bikes because I can't believe how far off people are. So I think to that point, most of the people that I'm fitting on Pelotons are not cyclists per se. They are people who want to stay fit that just ended up getting one during COVID or another winter. And so I think it's how you approach it. Do you want to be comfortable on the bike? It's not really what type of cyclist you are. If you're going to ride your bike more than, you know, looking at the flowers type of thing, then you want to be comfortable. So, and I think that's easy to sell. I personally like to do a full fit on every type of bike, whether it's a hybrid, a Peloton, or whatever I'm fitting, because to me, you're not able to put the bars in the right location if you don't know what's happening with the body. So, I mean, there's some ways you can get around it, but for the most part, you really want to look at, and I think that's an important point, is that you need to look at the body and what's going on with them from a strength, a flexibility, a spinal structure, injury history, you know, what their goals are. And so, you know, take that goal question into the lower levels. If you're having trouble selling fit at the lower levels, you know, what is their goal? Who do they want to ride with? What, you know, and those will all come back to being comfortable on the bike. But I absolutely think you should charge for everything for fit, in my personal opinion.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, thanks, Beth. Yeah. You know, Greg, do you want to, I see you got something, go for it.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate where Beth was going with that. And from my point of view, not only as a bike fitter, but as a physical therapist, and, you know, the real difference between, and kind of circling back in with that original question as far as sizing versus fitting, you know, sizing is about finding a piece of equipment that will that will actually fit to that general size of the human, right? Fitting is really taking into account the needs and the physical biomechanics of that human, and how they're going to interact with the bicycle. And so the thing is, and this is my opinion, and you can feel free to disagree with me, but you can't do a good, or let me rephrase that. You can't do a consistent bike fitting without understanding the human that you're fitting the bike to. And so without getting a basic understanding of that human, through interview process, through understanding of their basic history, injury history, so on and so forth, as well as some key areas of what's going on with their physical body, their range of motion, their flexibility, some basic measures that way. Can you get somebody in a good position on a bike? You could probably get somebody on a position on a bike that will work for them without looking at any of those things. But can you do it consistently? And is it the best possible position for that person? Maybe not. And so here's the problem with just kind of winging it, as I like to say, is if you're not taking in that information beforehand, you very well might find a position that will work for that person's body. And you might be able to do it, 50 to maybe even 70% of the time, but you're not going to be able to do it 100% of the time. And I don't know that anybody can do it 100% of the time, but the reality is that if you have a good methodology, if you take into consideration what's happening with that human being first, and then apply it to the bicycle, you're going to find a good result 9.5 times out of 10. And to that point about sizing and creating that conversation to lead to fitting, I oftentimes use the tagline of saying like, well, buying that bicycle is investing in a piece of equipment, and buying into BikeFit is investing in yourself as a cyclist. And that is going to kind of merge those two things to allow the person to get the best possible experience from the bike, right? So a purchasing experience, an investment in yourself, and those things marry together to produce a much better experience on the bicycle overall.
Greg, I love that answer. And Damon, I'm having questions that are in the chat on the FitKit system. Can you talk about that at all?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about it, although not wildly familiar, but it was the first fitting system created in the US, interestingly enough, in case we want our historical data on that, because BikeFit had at one point advertised itself as the second oldest fitting system, which I don't know is a good advertising, as saying, hey, guess what, we're second. So that tagline I think died. But no, my understanding from FitKit is FitKit's a little bit more of a measurement system. And I think I kind of wanted to bring this in because Greg just mentioned this too, and I'm going to throw this back to this crew, is my understanding is that especially with newer riders, ones who are like the recreational cyclists or e-bikes, people getting into this, I don't know that consumers know the difference between sizing and fitting, right? So like if I use FitKit, I'm probably doing a little bit more of like getting body dimensions and then connecting that to the bicycle, right? So that this individual would quote unquote fit on this bicycle, right? This language I actually hear interchanged even with people within the industry. Oh, I wanted to change I designed the bike this way so it would fit like this. And I was like, well, is that fitting or is that fits? And so I feel like there's some really like language that gets confused. So my question I'm throwing to y'all is, do you explain the difference between sizing and fitting to your customers, or do you kind of merge it into one?
My camera is
great
out.
question.
I'm here because I guess I'm at that point. I used FitKit for many years, and you're right, because the other part was like the voodoo part, right? It was watch someone on a bike, move a handlebar up, shorten a stem, stand behind them and check their knee out, but you didn't have any real tools to calculate that. A plumb bob, later on a laser, some sort of a laser to line up the knees. I've FitKit started. My first introduction to it was in the late '80s, and then I think Chris Nuri took that over, and I attended many of his classes. And but I think we've evolved to this point where, personally, if I want to sell the high-end bikes, I have to have that system now. People expect that, the size cycle and a little bit more of a show, to be honest with you. If I'm going to charge $300 for a fit, and I can't sell a $300 fit by just looking at them on a bicycle, and I'm not going to sell that $8,000, $10,000 bike by just standing behind them and pulling out a plumb bob. No matter how much experience I have or how many times I've watched someone on a bicycle, and my opinion isn't enough now to do that. And so I'm at that point now where either I commit to bringing in a full building a studio out and doing that, or I just kind of resolve myself to selling $1,500 to $3,000 bikes. And I do get people that come in for fit, but that is because of my reputation and because I've helped people over the years. But it takes a long time to create a relationship with that customer, and I can't take 3 years to build a relationship with someone until they are ready to buy a high-end bicycle from me. I'll be here forever. So so I need something to speed up that process for me and to bring more people in, and that's why I'm looking at investing some money in a real system.
I love
People
the
expect. I think people expect that show now. They just they have been watching YouTube videos for the last 2 years, and they expect it to come in and they expect to come into a fit studio these days, and that's what they want. And so I'm ready to give it to them, and and also bring all the knowledge that we have from the past. So all that expert eye married with all the technology now, it seems like I can clobber people, to be honest with you. So.
Can I interject here?
Yep.
Mike, I had more equipment than anybody else in the country because I was fitting in a hospital. I had motion capture with 14 cameras. I had high-speed video. I had force plates. All that did is add time and money to what we were charging. I'm now using much less equipment and charging a flat rate for a fit. I don't sell bikes anymore. All I do is fit. And I get $450 an hour for it per fit. I mean, $450 per fit. The point is, what you're selling is you. The technologies come and go. You're the only thing that's consistent. You buy a camera system we have 14 cameras. And when I left the hospital, next year it's going to be 18 cameras. It's not the technology that makes the difference. It's the person using it. And that's what the hardest thing to learn. When at work, they tracked outcomes when I was at the hospital, meaning how successful or unsuccessful you were. My outcomes didn't change as I backed out of the equipment. I mean, there's a time and a place to do an EMG on a bike fit or to use high-speed video. I'm not saying you get rid of it or don't use it, but you don't need it all the time for everything. You need to be the expert all the time for everything. That's what makes it work.
Yeah, and if I may, I might like to just add in, and I don't disagree with Happy on this. I think that the technology that exists is amazing. There's some really great stuff out there, and unfortunately, companies and I'm not picking on them specifically, but companies like Retool were just marketing powerhouses with regards to BikeFit, and the average consumer started to believe that that Retool was synonymous with BikeFit. So that the motion capture was doing it. It's kind of like getting an MRI and expecting the MRI to do the surgery for you. And an MRI doesn't do that. And Retool does not do a bike fit for you. It is purely a goniometer. And so, unfortunately, I think that actually did a disservice to many of the really talented bike fitters out there, because the consumer now believes that they need that piece of technology in order to get a good fit. Does that technology help? Absolutely. There's a lot of positive outcome that can be had from the addition of technology to what we do, but it is not the driver of success when it comes to getting somebody in the right position. Can it help, potentially get you there in a more accurate way? Maybe, but to Happy's point, oftentimes it can add more time. And for all of us, time is money when it comes to, if you're charging for a bike fit that took you 2 hours before, but now takes you 3 because you've implemented technology that you have to set up before the person gets there. Now you're making less, per hour. And so it's, I think there are an awful lot of considerations to make if technology is something that you're going to add in. And what is the real value to you? Is it simply that, that piece of equipment is going to bring more people in the door? Or do you need to just do a little bit more community outreach and do some more education of the people in your area to say, hey, this is the value of fit and this is why it's important. It's not that there's a laser aimed at you. It's that there's a really educated person behind that laser that knows how to make and use that information. So I'm not shunning technology. I mean, I have a lot of technology myself. You see some of it sitting behind me. And so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's not valuable or that it doesn't have its place. But to Happy's point, your skill, your brain, your ability to decipher the amount of information coming in is really what creates the fit and the fit experience for someone. Your ability to take them through that experience, educate them as cyclists, especially the folks that are newer to this sport, it's just an opportunity to grant them this huge gift of information that, for whatever reason, this industry has always liked to kind of keep close to the vest. There's always been this little bit of a hazing period, I feel like, in cycling, where you have to learn by attrition. Like, I don't like that. I want to, let's give them all the information out front so that they're going to be the best possible educated cyclist, best possible educated consumer, and therefore have the best possible experience on a bike.
I like that answer, Greg. And I'm thinking it almost is like we should have a conversation, not today, but at some point dedicated around actionable steps from going from just doing sizing to actually selling these higher end fits, like so retailers can walk through. I was just thinking of a recent visit I did to a retailer who had dedicated a huge room for fitting. Rochelle, you're with me, a huge room, beautiful, beautiful fit studio, but nowhere was there like pricing or any information about anything. So I think you have to actually show that you're in the fit business, so people know that as well. But I'm not the panel expert here. I'm just
it was a good comment. That goes back to the whole, like, make it a part of everything. But let me just add one more thing to the situation. If you own a shop and there's 5 shops around you that all have a motion capture and a fit bike, what makes you different than them? I had this situation happen in Houston. I had a dealer call me, and he had some training with us, and then told me that he needed to go and buy, I don't want to say the name because I don't want to give any kind of a specific system and some things about $30,000. And I said, why? He says, the other 4 shops around me are getting it, and I'm worried that cyclists are going to choose this over what I have. In other words, they will value that over working with me for whatever reason. And so I kind of stepped back and said, okay, so the concern, I think this is what you were saying, was like, if someone's buying a bike from me, they need to see that this is valuable, that there's something there, that there's some kind of value to it. And to an extent, I think that comes to the process that you create, the way that you make them feel, the questions you ask, the process you go through, right? Like you are right to an extent. Like I think there's something to say that if you pull out a plumb bob, I don't know if someone's going to feel great. They also might not know what it is, and it's a construction instrument from like 40 years ago. But I also don't think that means you got to have 26 cameras in your place either. Like there is something in between there, and creating that relationship is going to lead you to more dividends. Like I think what you were saying was, well, it takes, creating that relationship takes a long time. And it's like, Well, yeah, and that's the same thing as planting seeds over time, right? They don't all bloom at the same time either, but eventually you kind of work your way into having that. Because if not, I mean, the question is do people come in a shop and do they go, what motion capture system do you use for your fit? You know, do you fit with this system? Do you fit with this tool? My understanding is that doesn't happen a lot. It does happen sometimes, but they're more looking for someone who's going to be able to meet their expectations, solve their issues, and do it efficiently. So tools should enhance what you do, but it's not going to make or break it or make someone feel like, oh, I got a good fit, because anybody could spend $30,000 and put you on a machine and say you're good to go, right? I saw one. I'm going to rip on a company. I saw one from Cell that's $35,000 for this ID machine, where you're supposed to be able to hit the button and it's supposed to simplify it, not have any dots and human markers on, and it just kicks back and tells you where they should be, and you set them up, right? So any employee can just hit the button and they get a motion capture full kick-ass fit for $35,000 of your investment. But is that the memorable experience? Is that the relationship? Is that the reason they trust you and come back to you and ask you questions and connect to your service department and your sales department? It might have created an experience, but it doesn't create a relationship.
I would argue that it doesn't give you a fit. It just gives you where they are on a bike, and it replicates their bad habits. To me, a true fit means you're understanding the mechanics of the rider, and you're helping them to improve their mechanics before you do the bike. In other words, why replicate what they do when you can make them better?
I like that, Happy. Ted, what are you thinking over there? I'm sorry I haven't gotten back to you yet, but the conversation's kind of gone all over. What are your thoughts on everything?
Well, I've enjoyed listening to it all, because it seems like the stuff that Damon and Greg and Happy people have been talking about, and then I can't remember the nice lady's name who does the fitting with the BMX bikes and all that. But anyway, she's on the right track, because what we're speaking of here, I'm seeing, is you're talking of more upper echelon, higher elevation on bicycles and the fitting and the pricing and all that kind of stuff. And you have to start somewhere. And if you don't start with the basic customers coming in, that are getting into cycling, and like Damon and Greg were saying, you create an atmosphere and a warm, huggy relationship. Well, that takes a while, but it doesn't take 3 years. It could take only a month or 2 or 3 or 6 at the most, because you're relying on them to come to you, and then you're giving them of your expertise and of your experience in cycling. And that is just a common sense type approach. Every time you sell even a build entry level bike, $200, $300, $400, $500, $600, you're giving that person a bicycle that's going to fit their need the best. And it's interesting, because not everybody can always get a bicycle that fits their body type, because then you get into custom type biking, and that's a whole different ball game. But you've got to make a bicycle fit this person, or you try to select a bike from your floor that's going to fit this person's need the best, and to whichever direction cycling they're going. And as to the comment about having all this experience and going to the cycling school, the fit school, blah blah, that's all great. But then my axiom always was, a good schooling does not always mean a good education. And that's the key to it. What do you do with that schooling that you've gotten? How do you apply that education to your client? And then when you come in for a bike fitting, the different tools you use are going to also reflect the knowledge that you have as a bike fitter. And you've got to be able to relate anecdotes and experiences in cycling to get them into cycling and make them a better cyclist, that you're actually while you're fitting these people, you're actually teaching them how to be a better cyclist. So you're actually growing the sport by working with a client, and you're showing them as you're fitting them. And it's like, I can't remember, it was Greg, like you said, you get this big $35,000 machine and you hook up the buttons and you say, there you go. That's not the way you do it. You have to touch the person. You touch the shoulder, you touch the leg. You measure these people out, and they get a feeling that they belong to you, like they're part of a team. And even though you're the expert, you have to make them feel like they're part of your team. You're making them part of your family. And when they go into your shop, they want to come back. And that's the whole key to everything you're speaking of. But then, see, that's kind of the second, third level. And I would like to harken back almost a little bit to where this first level is, what kind of tools do you use? How do your tools influence the people that you're working with to say, boy, this is really nice personal stuff here. I'm getting a real good feeling that this person is touching me and looking at where is my kneecap? Where's my ankle? Where's my hip bone? Where are my shoulders, my arm reach? Well, what level is on my handlebars? Where do my levers fit? All this, the seat, the angle of the saddle. What type of saddle do I get? All this how does a shoe fit? Do you go out on the pedal farther? Do you go in? How close to the crank do you? All this various stuff that works with a fitting. That's the kind of knowledge you have to be able to apply to your so-called education. And if you can't bring that to the customer, then he's not going to know what he's talking about, which is why I was going to bring back a few tools, or the tools that I use. And then, because it looks like the people that are participating here are really more advanced. They're not beginning. They're not trying to get into fitting. They're already doing fittings. They know how to fit. And as a result, then that's a whole different level of participation you're getting. And I was hoping that there would be a lot of people in the NBDA that don't get fittings, that would like to do some fittings or get into it, that they know what they're getting into, that they would get to be a little better feel for, hey, can I do this? Can I really go there? Do I have to send them over to somebody else who's going to do that and then come back to me for their general bike stuff? So that's kind of where it is. So that's your call then on where you'd like me to go, because I could participate at the next level with these guys. That was plan B down the line for the next time or two. And the other stuff is what I had prepared for today, you see.
I love that. I think we should do a get into fit one too. But because we only have like 8 minutes left here today, I just love that everyone's here. I wish we always had more time. We always run out of time.
I know.
Phil, I see you over there. You have any questions, any thoughts, anything you guys want to share? Are you just listening in? Like, what are you doing with Fit right now at the store?
Well, this is Brad sitting next to me. He's our fitter. So
yeah, this is my first time on the meeting, so
Welcome.
Just listening in. Thanks for being here. Thanks. Sorry to call you out like that. I just thought.
listening in and enjoying all the good information. But yeah, I kind of have developed over the course of almost 20 years, just like most of us probably have, just my own little system, and really, looking for just ideas to add a bit of spark to, or maybe some changes to the system I'm using. Be a bit more marketable and a bit more competitive, because I have a lot of, I have cases where people are leaving our town and going to another town that, has that some shop or bike fitter is offering services that I'm not offering, even though I feel confident in the service that I provide. I think someone was talking about earlier that, I've always been a little bit reluctant to see a lot of value in the show. Someone used that terminology, but there is an element of that. There's an element of providing something that's interesting to the customer, and I think the most important part, just kind of reiterating what some other people have said, is that developing that relationship, and that's been a way for me over the years to develop to cultivate a relationship with not only my road customers, but anyone else who wants, a bit deeper service than what, even for if someone has a concern about, maybe someone comes in with with some kind of biomechanical problem that, the concern that they may not be comfortable on their hybrid or on their comfort bike or whatever, I've been the go-to guy for that. And it just offers an interesting opportunity for me to get to know someone more closely, and it's always been interesting for me to dig in and ask questions and figure out what's making this person tick and what I can do to help, and that's it's develop long-lasting relationships. And I think that's a philosophy that we've always just followed here at our shop, and in every aspect of the business is creating relationships and not just being a store where people come and buy something and leave.
I'd like to kind of push home something that you mentioned. I really like this idea. Number one, that that you've kind of developed your own practice over time, and that's something that I encourage people to do. I mean, we create a platform for education, But that platform should be adapted to the way that you're going to perform bike fit. This goes back to the idea of not having, no one system has ownership over bike fit, and that's not how this should really work. But one of the things historically that people have said is that bike fitting is an art, and I tend to disagree with bike fitting being an art. I like to think of bike fitting being a science that is applied in an artful way. And so what do I mean by that? I mean that what we try to do is present things with the best possible evidence that we have currently. And sometimes that evidence change, and we should change our procedures accordingly. But the way you deliver that is where the art is put in place. And so I don't think it's a complete misnomer to say that bike fitting has art to it, but it should be a science that is presented in an artful way. And by that means, like, you have some poetic license to be able to come up with your script, come up with your way of delivering that information, and the show of it, the experience of it, and the flashiness of how that's delivered is really where the art comes into play. And there's a lot of room for expression there. We all know our customer base, and we get a flavor for what that need is. And in some areas, it might be that your perception of what your customer base needs is, I have to have a system to feel like I'm being competitive. In other areas, and I don't necessarily think that's the right thing, as Damon had pointed out earlier, but what I'm talking about here is this idea of coming to a good evidence-based methodology for creating the fit platform that you apply to the human being, but how you deliver that is where you have the opportunity to have some creativity.
Yeah, we definitely want to keep, our people with us, right? And coming to us and seeing us as the experts. The conversation has been great. And I'm seeing all these great questions in the chat, trying to figure out how to become a confident and accurate fitter. How do I start? I think what I'll do is I'll share the emails of the people on this call today with Greg and Damon after, and you could follow up, because I don't know if we have so much time to get to all of these. The Peloton Fit. Beth, you've been doing the Peloton Fits, right? Do you have a certain standard rate, or does it change for every fit? Or
no, I do a standard rate. It's half of my other rate, because I don't, and back to, I don't know his name, on 2BC bike.
Yeah, 2BC, yeah, Joe.
Because I have some ideas for you, because people will laugh at me. I'll get your email, but I still do use a plumb bob and a goniometer, but I also do a video system where it's an overlay, which is now outdated, and I'm looking for another one, because my market's mostly the charity niche, and they've got big lunch muscles, and they're just out to fight cancer and ride their bikes. They're not necessarily fit athletes. And so they find it. I did have Retool. I think I said this on the last one, and I sold it back to them. I found that the video was way more effective for my customers, because they could see a before and after, and I could overlay it on top so that they could see the changes. And what I've always said to them is, this doesn't make me a better fitter. It allows you to see what I see. And so I feel in those cases, and the other thing I wanted to mention was a medical perspective. The more you can learn about the body, the more you come across as knowing what you're doing. And I think that's, combined with some simple tools, are more effective. So back to the Peloton Fit, I will sometimes do a before and after video on my cell phone in their house, because I go to their house to do the Peloton Fits. And it's amazing, because they didn't see what I saw when I first came in. I mean, most of these people look like they're my height, when they're riding their bikes. I mean, I can't believe how far off they've been. So I charge $150 for my Peloton Fit. I will do it virtual, but most people in my area want me to come to them. So, and then I charge $300 or $295 for my full fit.
How do you market the Peloton Fit? How do you let people know that you do that?
I did it through social media and also word of mouth. I do a newsletter every other week for the store, so we send it out that way. I'm telling you, you know what is a really good idea? I had I work with chiropractors and PTs, to Greg's point. If you can align with some medical professionals, I have a couple of chiropractors, I have a podiatrist, I have a massage therapist, I have, all these people in my pocket. So then when I get in a difficult case, but my key to the Peloton was I actually fit an owner of a chiropractor practice, and she was amazed at my practice. So she was just like, oh my gosh, I have to tell all my clients about this, because they had a ton of Peloton injuries during COVID, people working out. So they were getting all these people into their chiropractic office. So in the meantime, she's like, I need a fit. So when I did it, she was like, oh my gosh, I got to tell everybody. So I would I fit many doctors. I fit the podiatrist I work with. I fit PTs. I fit, the more medical professional people you fit and they have confidence in you, then the more the word of mouth gets out. And also I learn from them. I pick their brains when I've got them. So.
I love that.
Okay.
Gosh, it's like 2:02. Let's see, closing thoughts. Damon, you want anything? We're back here, December 3rd, I think. So not too long, a couple weeks away.
Yeah, I don't want to go too, people are over time. This has been great. I appreciate all the questions. I feel like there's like 9 things I should have come back to in this whole situation. And I'm glad this group is, even if you do the practice, hopefully you're sitting down and learning from each other or learning from information we have and getting fit out there. Because I think my closing comment is, I don't think cyclists understand what fit does. I think, to the point Beth said, until someone gets fit with you or spends time with you and they have that experience, I don't think they understand it. We're not putting out money in the industry to explain people the benefit of it. So you kind of are the first source. So if you have a shop and people don't know and you offer the service, then you're doing a disservice, right? You not telling people the benefit and understanding that, or doing it in language that they understand, start doing that so that everyone understands how powerful it can be, until the industry itself decides to start kicking it out there, or Greg and I somehow become millionaires and tell everybody how great fit is. One of the two is going to happen, right?
Definitely the millionaire.
I'm going on the number. Yeah, the millionaire. I'm with you.
I'm with Damon on that one. I would love that. I'm not going to hold my breath because I think I'd pass out. But I'm humbled actually by the amount of amazing questions and the wealth of knowledge that's sitting here with us today. Being a panelist and feeling as though I'm sitting with a bunch of peers is just a wonderful sensation to feel like there's this many people that either have insight or have interest in getting in. And, I will throw out there for all of those who are here today and anybody that's interested, Heather, I'm more than happy to share any of my contact information and speak to any of you offline. You can ask Damon, because I've wasted hours of Damon's life talking about this stuff.
Not a waste. Awesome.
But I am always happy to chat. If there's any way that myself or SICI can be of service or help to any of you, please don't hesitate to reach out. It is not a bother. I encourage you to do so. We like to be here as a resource on top of, of course, we're here to offer coursework and do things like that. But if there's something I can help you with, or something I can talk you through, I'm volunteering myself. I'm not going to volunteer Damon unless he wants that responsibility, but
I'll volunteer Damon.
I'm technically not supposed to volunteer, but that's a whole other story. But I am happy to help.
Actually, I'll volunteer myself as well.
I'm joking. I'll definitely, you could put me out there. I'm happy to help. But I honestly, for starting point stuff, in like the question that came out from Byron, I would contact Greg first because he's running a school. He's connecting people with right now. So I think he'd be the first line that you talk to.
I love this. And Beth, I put in Joe's email. I hope you got it. Awesome. Cool. So thank you everyone for being here. We are like crushing this Friday, absolutely taking it on. It's a glorious day. Get back into the store, get back out there and be fit, like excited, and just have a great afternoon. Thank you, Damon and Greg. We really appreciate you. Thank you for everyone for showing up.
Thanks, everyone.
And,
Thank you.
have a great weekend.
Thanks.
See you later.
We'll see ya.
Yep.